Welcome to the Depth Dive. Today we're jumping straight into the big movers in crypto, blockchain, and AI.
Yeah, lots happening.
We've pulled together news, market analysis, expert thoughts, all sorts of sources.
Mm.
And the mission really is just to cut through the noise, give you the stuff that matters, and maybe spark some, aha moments.
Exactly. It's a fast-moving space, from Bitcoin's price chatter to, well, big questions about central banks and how all this tech is actually weaving into things.
Okay, let's kick off with the crypto markets then. There's a definite buzz about Bitcoin, right? Talk of it maybe hitting $100,000.
There is. It seems fueled by some positive news companies, maybe buying it for reserves, new partnerships, that kind of thing.
So that's a hopeful tone for sure.
Yeah.
But what's really driving that optimism, do you think?
Well, it's this idea of institutional buy-in. When big players add Bitcoin, it signals a belief in its long-term value.
Right.
And partnerships making it easier to use Bitcoin, that broadens its reach. But, it's not just the headlines. Market sentiment matters too.
And sentiment has shifted, hasn't it? The fear and greed index moved from extreme fear up to just fear. It's at 37 now.
Yeah, that's a notable shift. Extreme fear often suggests, maybe the market's bottoming out, people are overselling.
Uh-huh.
Moving just to fear. Well, it suggests caution is still there, but maybe the worst pessimism is easing off. People might be more open to good news.
And the whole market cap, it's creeping up towards $3 trillion globally. Around $2.75 trillion now. Up nearly 2% just in the last day.
The scale is pretty incredible. It really is.
Yeah.
And adding to that, the total volume traded jumped significantly, almost 48% in 24 hours.
Wow.
But the dollar figure gives context, $64.95 billion.
You're right.
So yes, more activity, definitely. The question is, can it stick?
Yeah.
Will it bring in real capital?
Right. But when you look at DeFi, decentralized finance, things seem a bit quieter there.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
Yeah, volume on DEXs, decentralized exchanges, is about $5.35 billion. And the total value locked, PVL, in DeFi protocols, is around $91 billion. Relatively low compared to the overall market size.
So what does that mean? Is DeFi just lagging?
Could be a few things. Maybe it's still maturing. Maybe regulatory fog's an issue. Or perhaps it's just waiting for that next big innovation.
Oh, okay, but stablecoins seem really, really active.
Oh, absolutely central. Volume there is huge. Nearly $60 billion, 59.51 BN. And their dominance is almost 90%.
90%.
Yeah, it just shows how vital they are for trading for liquidity. They're kind of the digital dollars making everything else move.
And the big two, Bitcoin and Ethereum, they seem to be gaining ground, market cap-wise.
Yep. Bitcoin's cap is up to $1.73 trillion, dominance nearing 63%. Ethereum's also climbed, $197 billion market cap.
So, consolidation around the leaders?
It suggests that, continued investor confidence in maybe their fundamentals and staying power.
Now, something that caught my eye was Chainlink being called out as the top real-world asset token. What's the significance there?
Chainlink. Yeah, $8.91 billion market cap. What's really interesting is their CCIP cross-chain interoperability protocol.
Interoperability, making things work together.
Exactly. Letting different blockchains share value, share data smoothly. Imagine using an asset from one chain in an app on another. That's the goal.
That sounds pretty fundamental.
It really is for connecting this fragmented ecosystem. And we're seeing others too, right? Avalanche, Hedera, Ondo, Centrifuge. This RWA token trend is growing.
Well, okay, tokenizing real-world stuff. There's hype, especially after Larry Fink's comments. But are there real roadblocks? Practical problems?
Oh, definitely. It brings up some tricky questions, especially on open, permissionless blockchains.
Like what?
Well, how do you do KYC? Know your customer. How do you verify who's holding these tokens?
Right, compliance.
And how do you stop tokenized assets ending up with, say, sanctioned entities? It's complex. Centralized platforms might actually have an easier time with that right now because they have systems in place.
Makes sense. So just to ground us, where are prices right now? Bitcoin.
Bitcoin's trading around $87,318.
Yeah.
Up about 2.6% in the last day, 8% over the week. Pretty solid.
And Ethereum.
ETH is at $2,640. Smaller gains, up 1.6% daily. Pretty flat over the week, just 0.23% up.
Okay. And Ripple XRP.
XRP is around 0.511 cents. Actually down a bit, 0.4% in 24 hours, and down 1.6% over the week.
Got it. A useful snapshot. Okay, let's pivot now. The Federal Reserve. This is potentially huge. We saw Jerome Powell's comments and then President Trump's reaction. What's the out?
Well, Powell basically said tariffs aren't directly hitting inflation short term, but inflation's still definitely a worry.
And Trump's response?
Pretty direct. urging rate cuts, and even floated the idea of, well, firing Powell.
Wow. Okay, so there's political tension there.
For sure. And it makes this whole other idea, abolishing the Fed, entirely seem, well, more relevant to discuss, even if it's radical.
Right. So if we just look at the arguments for doing that, what are they?
The core arguments usually circle around ending what critics call centralized monetary manipulation.
Like the Fed printing money, QE?
Exactly. Quantitative easing. The idea is that it devalues the dollar. They also argue for letting the free market set interest rates, not the Fed artificially controlling them.
It sounds a lot like the arguments for Bitcoin, doesn't it? Fixed supply, decentralized.
There's a definite overlap in philosophy there. Yeah. Proponents also talk about wanting more accountability, more transparency.
The Fed hasn't had a full audit historically, right?
That's a common point raised. Compare that to Bitcoin's public ledger, where everything's theoretically visible.
And then there's the no more bailouts argument, like 2008.
Right. The idea that ending the Fed would stop bailouts for big institutions, enforce more fiscal discipline, maybe even curb the national debt because the government couldn't just rely on the Fed.
Okay, so let's connect this directly to Bitcoin. If, hypothetically, the Fed was abolished, what happens to Bitcoin?
Well, you could argue it's a massive boost for sound, decentralized money.
Right.
Bitcoin's non-inflationary nature becomes way more attractive if the main fiat system looks unstable.
So adoption could accelerate, people looking for a hedge.
Plausibly, yeah. A hedge against uncertainty, a store of value. Plus, you'd essentially remove Bitcoin's biggest competitor, the central authority controlling the dominant currency.
That could be huge globally too, couldn't it? A shift in confidence.
Potentially. If the U.S. moved away from its central bank, other countries might question theirs. Bitcoin could start looking more like a truly global independent reserve asset.
It kind of pushes the world towards more decentralized systems. DeFi, peer-to-peer.
That's the logical extension of the argument, yes. Bitcoin could become sort of the base layer for a more distributed financial world.
It really is a mind-bending idea, which actually leads to a question for everyone listening. If you imagine a world without a central bank like the Fed, what does that financial system actually look like to you? Something to think about.
Definitely.
Okay, shifting gears again. Let's talk adoption. SPAR supermarkets in Zug, Switzerland, taking Bitcoin via Lightning.
Yes, this is great. Switzerland's already pretty crypto-friendly, but seeing a major supermarket chain adopt it, especially using Lightning.
Why is Lightning important here?
Because it makes Bitcoin payments fast and cheap, like suitable for buying groceries. Normal Bitcoin transactions can be slower and cost more. Lightning fixes that for small, everyday payments.
And CR is global, right? Could this spread?
That's the exciting part. If it works well in Zug, maybe they roll it out across their whole network. Big potential.
And it's easy for the shop. They get Bitcoin even if I pay in, like Swiss francs.
Exactly. The system they're using, Open Crypto Payment System, handles the conversion. So the merchant gets Bitcoin, the customer pays how they want. It lowers the barrier significantly.
Makes it almost seamless.
That's the key for real mass adoption, making it easy.
Okay, now something different exchanges. Kraken is laying off staff, hundreds apparently, maybe gearing up for an IPO in the US.
Yeah, that's the report. And it's not the first time recently either. They had layoffs back in October 2024, about 15% of staff after getting a new CEO.
So this is like streamlining, getting lean for the public markets.
Seems like a strategic move, yeah. Cutting costs, improving the books, positioning themselves for that potential IPO. Standard pre-IPO playbook, really.
Right. And speaking of financial products, ETFs, exchange-traded funds. Sounds like a lot's happening there, especially under the current administration.
Yeah, a whole wave of applications seem to be coming through. What's really interesting is Canary Capital filing for a spot Tron ETF.
Tron, okay.
But here's the kicker, with staking rewards.
Ah. Because the Ethereum ETFs that got approved, they specifically couldn't offer staking, right?
Exactly. The SEC made them remove staking. So if a Tron ETF gets approved with staking, that's a totally different value proposition for investors. It could be much more attractive.
Interesting angle. And Canary's filing for others, too.
Oh, yeah. XRP, Solana, SUI, even, get this, Podgy Penguins.
Okay, wow. So they're really casting a wide net. It shows a lot of institutional interest beyond just Bitcoin and Ether.
Definitely signals a broadening appetite for crypto exposure via these traditional wrappers.
Now, I know you've expressed some, let's say, philosophical reservations about ETFs for crypto in the past, just briefly.
Well, yeah, I mean, on one hand, they absolutely bring in institutional money, make it easier for people to invest. That's undeniable.
Yeah.
But you have to ask, do they really fit the whole decentralized ethos of crypto? who really benefits most? Is it just putting crypto into old financial boxes?
Yeah.
It's a valid discussion, I think, even while recognizing their market impact.
Fair enough. Okay, last big topic, AI. Some fascinating stuff happening in Dubai and Abu Dhabi.
Really proactive stuff over there. You had DWA, the Dubai Electricity and Water Authority, teaming up with Microsoft.
What were they focused on?
Basically using AI, particularly generative AI like Microsoft 365 Copilot, to boost productivity, creativity, streamlining tasks, improving collaboration in the workplace. Very practical applications.
Like using AI for day-to-day work improvements.
Exactly. Reflects how AI is becoming, a tool for the modern job market.
And Abu Dhabi's focus seems very much on health, life sciences.
Absolutely. There's this big collaboration under the HELM cluster, Health Endurance, Longevity, and Medicine.
It's HELM. Catchy. Who's involved?
It's the Abu Dhabi Investment Office, the Department of Health, the Mohammed bin Zayed University of Artificial Intelligence, MBZ UAI, and Hub 71, the Czech ecosystem.
It's a powerful lineup.
It is. And their goal is to use AI for major breakthroughs in medicine. Think precision medicine, personalized treatments, using AI to analyze complex health data.
So building a whole ecosystem, R&D, manufacturing, managing clinical data, genomic data.
Precisely. They're trying to build the whole pipeline.
Yeah.
Supporting startups through Hub 71, protecting IP, using MBZ UAI for AI talent and facilities.
What are the big picture goals for Hubby?
Tackle chronic diseases, improve early diagnosis, find better treatments, and ultimately position Abu Dhabi as, a global leader in health innovation driven by AI. It's ambitious.
Okay, wow. So wrapping this deep dive up, we've hit on a crypto market with some serious potential upside, this really fundamental debate around the Fed's future.
Real-world Bitcoin adoption popping up in places like Swiss supermarkets, the ETF scene getting more complex with things like staking.
And then this very strategic push into AI, especially in health, coming out of the Middle East.
Yeah, quite a landscape. And hopefully, sorting through it like this gives everyone listening a bit of a shortcut, some key takeaways, maybe those aha moments we talked about.
Definitely. So final thought to leave everyone with. Considering how fast both DeFi and AI are moving, what do you think will be the most profound way these two massive forces actually intersect and, reshape things down the line?
That's a big question.
Something to ponder. We definitely encourage you to keep exploring these areas. Thanks for diving in depth with us.